Okay, this is our third and final day on Greek myth. The focus will be on Thebes, but I'll tell several other stories too. I think there will be plenty to do. Thebes, I remind you, the two main cycles of Greek myth are the Theban cycle and the Argive, from Argos, Argive cycle. Okay, now the Theban cycle. Thebes was founded by a man named Cadmus. Continuing with Greek myth today. Yesterday, I think we reached the Trojan War. In any case, that's right. The ship set sail from Aulis, and Clytemnestra returned to Argos, full of hatred for her husband. Justified to some degree, I think. Well, justified, no question. Okay, this is our third and final day on Greek myth. The focus will be on Thebes, but I'll tell several other stories too. I think there will be plenty to do. Thebes, I remind you, the two main cycles of Greek myth are the Theban cycle and the Argive. A climax, an initial climax of the Iliad. Today I think we'll be able to finish the rest. That is through book 24. Okay, in book 9, just to remind you a little bit, the embassy, as it was called, to Achilles failed. Odysseus, Aias, Ajax, and Phoenix had gone to... We'll continue with the Iliad. In our previous installation, we covered some background in books 1 through 9. A climax, an initial climax of the Iliad. Today I think we'll be able to finish the rest. That is through book 24. Okay, the Odyssey. We are going to pick up the pace a little bit. Today we'll deal with the most famous part, but it's unjustly the most famous. Anyway, I'm going to deal with it in summary fashion. Books 9, 10, 11, and 12 form the Great Wanderings. This is the most famous part, but it's unjustly the most famous. Anyway, I'm going to deal with it in summary fashion. Books 9, 10, 11, and 12 form the Great Wanderings. This is the most famous part of the Odyssey, but for no very good reasons. Number 11 is of anthropological interest, all of it's of mythical interest, but nothing profound at all, really. A great novel by George Orwell today. I would say it's the book of clearest intelligence in English, in any language, novel in any language. It's so clear-sighted, so lucid, so logical, and therefore so frightening. Okay, there are a lot of misconceptions about it, misunderstandings. The names are a little bit difficult, but here we go. At the center of the play, there are 4 young people, 2 young men, 2 young women, and they are, or think they are, in love. I better explain the title. A Midsummer Night's Dream means a dream that's a little bit crazy, in this case funny. This is a continuation of Antony and Cleopatra, and I know I'm using the word, I use these superlatives, great, the best, and all that. I know I said that King Lear is the most powerful, the most moving of the tragedies, and I'd make that distinction, though Antony and Cleopatra is almost as moving under totally different circumstances. It's the greatest of Shakespeare's plays, I think. This is a continuation of Antony and Cleopatra, and I know I'm using the word, I use these superlatives, great, the best, and all that. I know I said that King Lear is the most powerful, the most moving of the tragedies. And I'd make that distinction, though Antony and Cleopatra is almost as moving under totally different circumstances. It's the greatest of Shakespeare's plays. As You Like It, most people, I think that it's the greatest of Shakespeare's comedies. Maybe. Twelfth Night, too. But still, it's a wonderful play. The date, probably 1598, just as Shakespeare is entering his great period. With 1599, the next year, Julius Caesar, and the string of great tragedies. So it's the mature Shakespeare. The same year probably of Henry IV, Part 1. I'm going to tell you about the Bacchae, Bacchae, by Euripides. Euripides is one of the three giant writers of tragedy of the Greeks, as you may know. Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides. All three were in Athens. All three were basically Athenians. They are the three glories of Greek tragedy. Today I'm going to talk about a great film, Becket. It's all based on historical events. Historical events. Remember that 1066 is arguably the key event in British history. I think the Brits might not appreciate that, but they maybe see it that way. Anyway, 1066 is the date of the Norman conquest of England. Dostoevsky was a great psychologist, the greatest in fiction, I think. It's hard to judge these things, but Lord, he was interested in the depths of human beings, and in his opinion, and I think in most people's opinions, the Russians are great. Russia provided great samples of psychological complexity and emotional intensity, such passion. In a fascinating series, I think, of conversations, Smerdyakov reveals to Ivan what's really been happening. Smerdyakov, as I say, venerates, idolizes Ivan. Candide continued. We left Candide in South America. He had just fled from Buenos Aires. Cunegonde remained in Buenos Aires with the old woman. Continuing with the nun's priest's tale. So, Chanticleer says, citing authors, famous authors from Cicero and ancient authors, Chaucer, showing off his learning. His learning was vast, just vast. I like to consider myself a little bit of a learned guy. I'm nothing compared with Chaucer, nothing. Hi, today I'm going to tell you about the Canterbury Tales of Geoffrey Chaucer. I think it's the greatest poem in English. In fact, I know it is. There is nothing greater. Certainly not Paradise Lost or the Prelude of Wordsworth, nothing. And one of the great poems of the world. Chaucer lived roughly from 1340 to 1400. So he wrote in what is called Middle English, To Catcher in the Rye. Wonderful book. The central character is Holden Caulfield. Holden, Holden, Caulfield, Caulfield. He's 16 years old, and the action of the novel takes place over one extended weekend, from Friday to Monday, just before Christmas. Holden has flunked out, important expression, flunked out of his 5th private school, Chrysanthemums, Steinbeck. Chrysanthemum is a flower. Okay, Like most of Steinbeck, it's situated in California in the Salinas Valley. I've never been there, but he made it famous. Agricultural farm. Dostoevsky's other great novel, Crime and Punishment, it's not quite at the plateau, at the heights of Brothers Karamazov, but it's one of the best novels in the world's literature, as far as I know. Depth of religious feeling. There's more religious, what should we say, conviction, I think, and even more religious thinking in this novel than there is in Brothers Karamazov. 3:1. In the first canto, Dante says that he was halfway along his road of life. Well, that means biblically we have 70 years. We can expect maybe 70 years of life if we're relatively fortunate. So that meant that he was 35 years old. At this time, he says he was lost in dark woods. This is an absolutely great story, formally, because I don't know many Hemingway short stories, but in this one, Hemingway is kind of an experiment. He slashes. There's almost no description. There are almost no he said, she said. There is no he said and scratched his toe or something. She said and she shook her head. No details like that. It's minimalist. It could not be, I think, a more condensed. Hills Like White Elephants, Hemingway. 1920s. Typical Hemingway, but a very good one. Okay, the situation, Spain. We are in at a small train station located between Barcelona and Madrid. In those days, one had to stop there to pick up the train to Madrid from, I guess, Barcelona. It doesn't matter much. Out in the middle of nowhere, an extremely hot summer day in southern Spain. I'll tell you about my relationship with Goethe. When I went to France just after graduating from college, I was on fire and I learned French and I taught myself some German. I was really interested, especially to read Goethe. Okay, then, and as an undergraduate I had read Faust in translation. We're going to talk about the Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is the great epic poem of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, the Greek name for the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The earliest, there are many versions, many traces of this poem remaining. The earliest ones from about 2000 BC. They are in Sumerian. And basically the myth is Sumerian. The Sumerians were the first civilized people maybe in the world. I'm going to talk to you today about Dickens' novel Great Expectations. I think most people would say that it is his masterpiece, though close seconds are Bleak House, which few foreigners, and I know Koreans, have heard of, but they should read it. Close second, I would say. David Copperfield, close third. In that order, the three best, I think. Okay, today we're going to talk about Gulliver's Travels. This really is an important and a great work by Jonathan Swift. The date is around 1726. Swift is interesting, and I'll tell you some things about him. In fact, he's fascinating. He was born of English parents in Ireland. Catholic, subjected, miserable Ireland. Around, say, 1670. I'm going to mix my account. I'm going to mix into my account plot and analysis, especially character analysis, but also analysis of what Hamlet, the play, means. Of course, some of these things are debatable. Do you understand? To debate. That is, not all experts will agree. Today we will complete Julius Caesar. It really is a wonderful play. Immediately, ad rem, to the matter, Latin. A-D-R-E-M. Okay, we're in Act 3. The assassination is complete. Brutus has spoken to the crowd, has given his succinct and oh so orderly and dispassionate presentation of the reasons why they thought it necessary to assassinate Julius Caesar. Today we're going to talk about King Lear, Shakespeare's most moving, most emotionally powerful drama. This frightens me. I'm glad that Dr. Shin told me only now, because it's true that I tend to become emotional about the things I talk about. Well, King Lear, I'm afraid of. It is so, in class, I don't let myself read, I let others read Lord of the Flies. Golding writes this, what shall we say? This is the most lucid, I used that word about 1984 too, but lucid analysis of human nature that I can think of in a novel. That's interesting. A rival to it might be Gulliver's Travels by Swift. It has problems too, but for profundity, it's its equal, and really maybe a better written novel. Okay, Golding is writing this in response after World War II. Okay, now words Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo, often misunderstood, means why are you a Romeo? Why are you a Montague? Why couldn't you be some other family so that I could love you and marry you? Why must you be a Montague, my family's enemies? But there it is. Presumably they were together sexually only once, and unluckily, I guess, maybe not so unluckily, but unluckily, let's say, she conceived. Okay, now let's look at this man. He's a respected preacher, apparently a very devout religious faith, a theologian. I'm going to talk to you about T.S. Eliot and W.H. Auden, and that's a good pairing. I know a lot about Eliot because I wrote my master's thesis on him. The topic was his criticism, that is, the criticism that he wrote, because he was the critical authority of the first half of the 20th century. Okay, The Great Gatsby. Fitzgerald was from the Midwest, and this novel, in a sense, is about somewhat innocent Midwesterners going east, going to the Big Apple, so to speak, and to the big, the most prestigious universities, big money too. The novel is situated in the 1920s. I talked to you about Dante's Divine Comedy, and you heard that Dante Pilgrim is different from Dante Author. These are two different people. Similarly, the speaker of a poem is not the same as the author of the poem. In fact, their relationship is quite similar. Speaker, author, different. Okay, we have a speaker. Now, returning to stanza for a second. You can only have stanzas if the poem is divided into regular groups of words. If this is a continuation of Antony and Cleopatra. And I know I'm using the word, I use these superlatives, great, the best, and all that. I know I said that King Lear is the most powerful, the most moving of the tragedies. And I'd make that distinction, though Antony and Cleopatra is almost as moving. under totally different circumstances, it's the greatest of Shakespeare's plays. Today we're going to do a film that won a lot of praise and Academy Awards recently, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, called American Beauty. I analyzed this with classes in school, and I've reanalyzed it now, so I think I have a lot to say about it. The star, especially Kevin Spacey, wonderful. Today I'm going to talk about a great film, Becket. It's all based on historical events. Remember that 1066 is arguably the key event in British history. I think the Brits might not appreciate that, but they maybe see it that way. Anyway, 1066 is the date of the Norman conquest of England. Pleasure to talk about Excalibur. The film is now about 20 years old, I think, maybe. But it's still just great. And I show it in classes often. High school, I would show it in college classes too. Because it is a good way to learn about Arthurian legends. That is, King Arthur, Queen Guinevere, Lancelot, Gawain, Percival, all these guys, famous. The literature is great. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about a recent film, which I think is quite good, surprisingly good. And there are certainly very good performances by 3 or 4 people in it. The title of the film is Man on Fire. Leon, a story about a kind of a killer, cold-hearted killer who's kind of in despair, and whose heart is touched by his relationship with a little girl. Same thing, Man on Fire. But the contrast is very revealing, and it reveals that Man on Fire is a far better film, and I'll explain why. Amadeus and Mozart, the real theme is Mozart, but the film, the great film, is worthy of analysis and of understanding. Recapturing our mood here, the film is a moral analysis of Salieri, a man who's angry at God, feels cheated, feels cheated. Notice the theme is a great one in literature, Job. This is what Job is about. We're going to discuss A Midsummer Night's Dream. And also, after that, we'll discuss Romeo and Juliet. Interestingly, these two plays were probably written in the same year, 1595. So these are early Shakespeare plays, but famous, of course. In fact, today we're going to talk about Shakespeare's greatest play, in my opinion, Antony and Cleopatra. This greatest business, I realize I used with too great facility. But as I've said before, that's what I'm looking for, greatness, and that's what I think most people are looking for. And one tries to determine relative value of things in everything, coffee or people or whatever. And so Antony and Cleopatra, I think, is it. 1607, the final of the great plays, but I think the greatest. I'll show you why. As You Like It, most people, I think that it's the greatest of Shakespeare's comedies. Maybe. Twelfth Night, too. But still, it's a wonderful play. The date, probably 1598, just as Shakespeare is entering his great period. With 1599, the next year, Julius Caesar, and the string of great tragedies. In Norway, a special situation has arisen. 30 years earlier, before the beginning of the play, Hamlet Sr., Hamlet's father, had a duel, a fight, with the then King of Norway, whose name was Fortinbras. Fortinbras was the King of Norway. These two had a fight, and to the winner would go some land. Today, Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. 1599 is the date usually assigned. For students of Shakespeare, by the way, and Korean students in general, who I find notoriously ignorant of dates. In fact, I once made a statement I think may be true. I have never met a Korean student who knows a single date. That's incredible. Not one? Okay, explanations, of course. This is a digression, but this is important. Of course, students memorize probably hundreds of dates for their exams, but this is a perfect example of what happens in Korean education, I think. Today we're going to talk about King Lear, Shakespeare's most moving, most emotionally powerful drama. This frightens me. I'm glad that Dr. Shin told me only now, because it's true that I tend to become emotional about the things I talk about. Well, King Lear, I'm afraid of. It is so, in class, I don't let myself read, I let others read. We're going to talk about Macbeth, Shakespeare's Macbeth. The date is 1606. You'll recall Shakespeare's dates, which one must know. 1564, 1616. The date of Hamlet, easy to remember, 1600. So if you only remember the date of Hamlet, 1600, you can remember a lot of dates. Why is that important? It's important because the sequence of Shakespeare's plays is important. Okay, Romeo and Juliet. Here we go. 1595, same year as A Midsummer Night's Dream, as I was saying. Okay, this famous play is about lovers. Two famous lovers, Romeo and Juliet. They live in Verona, Verona, in northern Italy. Of course, they're Shakespeare's people, and they are much more British than Italian, but that's okay. Shakespeare took his... I'm going to discuss some maxims, is the word we use in English, maxime in French, written by La Rochefoucauld. He was a 17th century French thinker, man of letters, and he put together a collection of maxims, as he called them. A maxim is a short, usually, perhaps witty, incisive, cutting through, clearly as possible stated observation about human nature, especially. Number one, human nature. Number two, the human condition, what it means to be a human being in this world. These two, the most fascinating of all subjects. And La Rochefoucauld's observations are among the sharpest ever made by any human being. I'm not the only one who thinks that. The second maxim I will discuss with you is, I will translate this way. We are so accustomed to, we are so used to disguising ourselves from others that we end up disguising ourselves from ourselves. Okay, now, no matter how young you are, you know that very often you wear a mask, I wear a mask, we put on a mask for this occasion or this occasion, this person or this person. Now, we have to be very careful not to assume that there is some real me, real I, behind these masks. Okay? Okay. Now, I love this one. And Dr. Shin said he liked this one too. He laughed a lot. Here we go. We often forgive or pardon those who are boring to us, those whom we find to be boring. But we can't ever forgive those who find us boring. Wow. Wow. Okay. It's easy to forgive a friend or a classmate or a student who's boring. After all, it's not his fault. But what if a student finds me boring? And there's nothing I can do to change that. Wow. I have to be pretty strong. I have to be a pretty strong person. I have to be pretty confident of the correctitude, the rightness of my views, my value as a person, my intellect, my appearance, my personality. I have to be pretty confident not to feel stung by his yawning in my face. Okay, another one. I don't even have to look this up. Generally, he says, one only praises others in order to be praised. If I praise someone, okay, if I praise that person directly, oh, you are excellent. Why am I praising him or her? One possibility, I genuinely admire this person's ability and all that. Two, I really want this person to like me and praise me. Oh, here's a hard one. You're young for this, but I'll tell you anyway. And Dr. Shin can cut it out. I mean, it's perfectly moral. There are good marriages, but there are not pleasant marriages. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now, I don't know. Frankly, I'm not sure what percentage of people would agree with that, and it depends on how long they've been married, too. He says, okay, the topic is the so-called wisdom of old men. Old women, too. But let's talk about old men. Some old men are said to be wise. Very few young people have ever been called wise, and I think it really is impossible. And we're assuming that there is such a thing as wise. And we're assuming that we all know what we mean when we say wise. And of course, when I raise this question, you can see, and you'll agree, we don't know what the word means, or we mean different things by it. Love. Now, I must discuss with you this word wit. Witty. Wit, I'm not sure. What is wit, first of all? Wit is a vast word like wisdom. Wit can be simply a clever way with words that causes people to laugh. Ha ha ha, that's witty. Okay, here's another one. There are people, he says, who would never have fallen in love if they hadn't heard about love from others. Whoa! There are people who would never, quote, fall in love with someone if they hadn't heard and learned about love from someone else. Let's say from our culture, from the movies, from the songs, from the cards, all that. Our culture says, gotta fall in love to be complete and happy. Uh-oh, I better fall in love. Hope you enjoy these. You who are young, these will not be easy. But I hope you can watch this again and again. Pick up La Rochefoucauld if you get a chance, but especially if you can learn French. But see these comments again and again and consider whether they're true or not. But these are among the sharpest things that have ever been said about man in the Western world, at least. These are all Western terms like vanity, which I suspect that you in Korea and in Asia have this word vanity, but you don't use it in the same way. Hypocrisy is a little bit hard. Hypocrisy is the homage that vice pays to virtue. Let me explain. Hypocrisy, hypocrite, pretending to be one thing, but really being another. Done most of them now. Okay, I love this one too. One is never so happy or so sad as one imagines oneself to be. I value this one tremendously, but once again it comes back to this unknowability of ourselves. But I won't dwell on that, but you see it, it's in everything he says. The idea here is, I'm happy. I just won some great victory. Someone praised me, or some important people like me, or I just won some prize, or I've been honored. I'm happy, oh so happy, but I'm certainly not as happy as I am imagining myself to be. A much more superficial one, but of course he can't be profound all the time, and no one can be. Can we ever be? I think he is sometimes. I think. Okay. This one goes, one never gives anything quite so generously as advice. I remember my mother telling me 50 plus years ago that people love to be asked for advice. I still remember this. We were living in Connecticut, for God's sake. We moved out of Connecticut to New Jersey when I was 10. So somehow before then, that is younger than all. Okay, I like this one. It should be in the front. I'm glad I found it. One only condemns, blames is the word blâmer here is the word condemns. One only condemns vice and praises virtue for reasons of personal gain. That is, oh, that's terrible. I'm morally outraged. That's terrible that people do that people said that he did that to those people, that he said that he did some cruel thing to a child or something. His point is, I'm afraid, that when I say that, I'm making a speech.